Welcome, welcome, folks. Thank you very much for tuning in on this episode. Thank you, episode. I am speaking with Mr. Paul Rowley, who wrote me into his film, Never Stop the Action, to be released very soon. And in the meantime, stay tuned for Paul. This episode is brought to you by Roxanne Barton Conlin, attorney and feminist activist. Hello there, Ozzie Stewart here, welcoming you to Season 10's Thank You Project with Paul Rowley. I appreciate you for tuning in, and as you know what I like to say, please follow, like, share, drop a comment. Shining light on filmmaker, visual artist, writer, director, editor, cinematographer, producer, and co-founder of Still Films, Mr. Paul Rowley. So, before we get to him, he's got to listen through his bio. Okay, then. Paul Rowley, an acclaimed filmmaker, visual artist, writer, director, editor, cinematographer, producer, and co-founder of Still Films, hails from Dublin, Ireland, and currently resides in Brooklyn. Delving into filmmaking in 1995, Rowley has crafted an impressive repertoire encompassing over 40 shorts, features, documentaries, video installations, and experimental films. Recognized as the Irish Film New York Rising Star and a two-time IFTA nominee for his documentary works, Rowley has garnered accolades from the Irish Arts Council, including the Glenn Dimplix Award from the Irish Museum of Modern Art and the Irish American Art Award. He's a distinguished member of the Brooklyn Filmmakers Collective. In 2007, Rowley co-established Dublin's renowned production house Still Films, where he serves as a co-director. The company's debut feature documentary, Sea View, debuted at the Berlin Film Festival in 2008, followed by the co-directed venture Building Something Modern in 2010 with Nikki Gogan, who also co-directed Sea View. Since then, Still Films has continuously impressed audiences across prestigious platforms like Sundance, South by Southwest, New York Film Festival, Hot Docs, Pompidou Centre Paris, among others. His recent acclaimed work, The Red Tree, sheds light on the clandestine history of Italian gay deportees under Mussolini's fascist rule in the 1930s, notably showcased at the CCI's Addressing the Nations early in 2021. This guy is always moving. This one's for the ladies, a project Rowley shot and produced in collaboration with director Jean Graham, premiered at the South by Southwest in 2018, clinching a special jury award and securing distribution by Neon. Paul Rowley's dedication to merging art with activism is evident in his role as the video director for Gays Against Guns in New York City, a feature documentary focusing on the movement battling the gun violence epidemic in the US, particularly impacting LGBTQ individuals and marginalized communities. With a rich tapestry of awards and accolades adorning his career, Paul Rowley stands as a visionary storyteller committed to reshaping narratives through the fusion of art and activism. Now, Paul Rowley. So, and really thank you for agreeing to this and spending the time
my pleasure,
and
of course.
allow us into your fabulous home, which I love. It's my second home almost.
Pretty much at this stage.
So, the first question for you, Mr. Rowley, how did your journey in filmmaking begin and what inspired you to pursue this path?
It was, for me, my journey into filmmaking was roundabout, as it is for many people who make films. I would say film was of interest to me because it includes everything. Writing, performance, music, photography. It's like that artwork that includes everything, right? And so, but when I was a kid growing up in Ireland, there was no film school. There was no way to really learn this, you know. And also, I mean, it's not really, not only was it not really a place that you can go study, it just wasn't really a profession that people even thought that we could do. We didn't really even have much of a film industry, you know, coming from, you know, colonized nation, and there just wasn't those resources and those opportunities there. I did win an art prize when I was about 4 years old. I remember drawing a picture of, it was a castle and a dragon or something, and I remember winning a medal for that and thinking at the time, oh, maybe I can do this stuff. You know? But with the educational system in Ireland, I didn't really get to focus on the arts so much, and actually ended up taking a different path. It's only really when, actually, but, you know, just to step back, where I can really say that I first got interested in like lens-based work was when my dad got me a camera when I was a kid, when I was like 7 years old or something. It was one of those little kind of click, click, that kind of really sparked my love for image capturing, you know.
How old were you then?
I would say I would have been about 7 or 8 years old. Yeah. And so it took me a long time to get to filmmaking. It wasn't really until I emigrated from Ireland and I moved to the US that I started taking, I did a degree in Ireland in literature and sociology. And after that, when I came to the US, I'd been like watching movies and I was so into art and all of that for years, but it wasn't really until I got to the US I started taking city college classes in San Francisco, where I lived at the time. And it was free. It was free to go to college, you know, in the 90s in San Francisco.
So would you say that what would be the turning point then, or a significant turning point that shaped your approach to storytelling now?
I think when I started to make short films in San Francisco at that time, short experimental films on Super 8, that was a turning point because now I was actually making films. It was the first time I was making films. And I think for me it was just so exciting. It was so exciting. I can still kind of feel the buzz, you know.
What motivates you to merge art with activism in your projects? Like, how do you navigate the intersection between the two?
I think it's, for me, I'm just really passionate about both, you know. And I love to make work, but I also love to dream, you know. And I think the dream is what connects both, right? With art, we're working in the world of the imaginary, you know, which is obviously about dreams, right? With activism, you're dreaming for a better future, you know, and I think the two are connected in that way.
Is there a specific type of activism that you're interested in? There's a specific arena, area?
Well, as a filmmaker, I guess the type of activism that I do is really about bringing messages to people, or presenting ideas, connecting communities, that kind of thing. I mean, as a queer person, obviously my activism has been like by default rooted in the LGBTQ plus community. And something I've worked on that for many, many years. But also, I mean, coming from Ireland, when I was 18, there was a huge struggle for reproductive rights in Ireland, you know, that has only in recent years become resolved. So I was very involved in that too. And I think, so I guess for me it's the urgency, you know, and just seeing an injustice, seeing something that's so easily changed, that's not being changed, that drives me crazy, you know.
And we're just in it right now. Can you discuss the creative process behind The Red Tree, and the challenges you faced in bringing that story to life?
Yeah, so The Red Tree is a short film from 2018 about a prison island that Mussolini put together for gay men. And that was the challenges about that film was that nobody who had been on this island that Mussolini sent these people to were still alive. You know, this was in the 1930s, and I was making the film like 80 years later. So none of the inmates survived. So how do you tell a story when the people aren't around? You know? And what happened as well that was really interesting, a lot of the people who had been condemned to this island by the fascists, it was their own family members, you know, who were like calling them out.
Perché se fossi stato mandato qui per quello che faccio, la colpa un solo nome avrebbe: amare.
You know, so when people were eventually liberated from the island, they weren't going around talking about it. Their families were trying to keep them quiet, you know. So what I did was I went to the island and I spent time there. And I just tried to absorb the history, walking around on my own. I went there in February. It's a very small island off the eastern coast of Italy called San Domino. And there was one kind of little bed and breakfast that was open that I stayed in, but there was very, very few people on the island. I don't know what the bed and breakfast owner thought of me, maybe that I was a weird bird watcher or something, but I would go out in the morning and walk around the island all day on my own and just try and soak up the history and think about, like, if I had been there, like, how would I have dealt with this isolation, you know, and how would I have dealt with the violence, and trying to put yourself into the shoes of the people. And this is where the idea for the characters came up. The characters, the idea of an older man who comes back to the island 60 years later to kind of pay homage to what happened to him and his friends there. Those ideas came to me as I was on the ferry that crossed over from the mainland, which is like a two-hour plus ferry ride. And then on the island as well, I started thinking about the idea of friendship. How do friendships form in confinement? And I came up with this idea of the main character having a confidant, like a best friend, this character Mimi. Just imagining how that would come about.
So there were no records anywhere?
Well, here, this is the thing though, there were records of police reports.
Okay.
The crazy things that they did to incriminate these men. Medical tests that people were subjected to,
right,
to prove their homosexuality and thereby condemn them to be imprisoned. So there was all these police reports that were all written in this very, very awful language, obviously. There were letters. There were letters from mothers to Il Duce himself, Mussolini, asking that their son might be released. So through these documents, which I met a historian in Milan who had fabulously gone into the National Archives in Rome in the 90s when Berlusconi got into power. His name is Giovanni Dell'Orto. He's a writer, he lives in Milan. But he had gone into the archives and photographed and photocopied all these records in the 90s because he thought that when Berlusconi came to power, these records would all just be tossed and that history of that oppression would be deleted from history. Much like they're trying to do here in the US right now with, you know, critical race theory, which is just, no, that's just American history.
Here we are again.
Yeah. So, but I think as well, so it was basically creatively what I've settled on with this idea of a hybrid film form that would be part documentary and part drama. So I wrote a script with a guy in Milan, Luca De Santis. I initially had arranged to meet with him as just as an informational interview, actually. He had written, it's funny, the book is actually sitting right here. In Italian, sono tutti maschi. In Italian, we're all men.
Wow.
So Luca had written this fabulous graphic novel, which was a history of this island, illustrated beautifully by Sarah Colone. And so I met with him to talk about this, and afterwards we got on really well immediately. And then after I got back to the US, I said, well, maybe what this film needs is narration to shape the story, and who better to work with it on than Luca.
What drew you to co-found Still Films, and how has the company contributed to your creative vision and growth as a filmmaker?
So in terms of Still Films, there were a group of us, Maya Darrington and Nikki Gogan and I, who had known each other for years from the dance floor, from film festivals, you know, from that whole world of, you know, this was like Ireland in the 90s. And so the 90s was like, it was house music and it was rave culture, and there was that kind of like do it anyway kind of aesthetic. It was the digital video revolution, you know, like the access to technology for filmmaking had really become way easier. And we had been working together on various projects over many years. But with still films, it was a case of like, we needed to actually have like an official company, basically. We needed to have something with a tax certificate number on it, so that we could access grants and so on. So in 2007, we formed Still Films, and our first feature documentary out of that was the film Seaview, which was filmed in collaboration with asylum seekers in Ireland.
So it was really a terrifying moment, because the same people you met in this country, they are the same people they've been sent a deportation letter. So, and you are not different from them, So the same letter can come to your doorstep any moment. We were living in fear, because we knew that anything can happen. And what made it to be really fearful was that we heard rumors that now, as soon as you receive the deportation letter, the next night you've been booked and then you are gone to Africa without anybody knowing.
How did the name come about?
For the company?
Still Films.
It came actually from the film Seaview, which it's the working title of Seaview. Seaview was one of the blocks of apartments in this asylum camp that we filmed in. And, but the film was initially, the working title was Ishka Marav, which is Irish language, and it means still life. It actually means dead water, dead water. So we had this idea of people staring at the sea in this confinement camp, So that was the title of the film, and then we had to come up with a name for the company overnight, basically. So we said, we'll call it Still Films, not realizing that like 15 years later, whatever, we would still have the same name.
There you go.
But it sticks.
Could you shed light on your experience at the prestigious film festivals like Sundance, South by Southwest, New York Film Festival? And how do these platforms influence your work?
Well, the great thing about film festivals, I think, is that you get to meet people watching your film in the same room. You get to have discussions with people afterwards. You get to meet audience members, you get to meet other filmmakers, future collaborators. So there's a lot of magic that happens during a film festival. It's like this little bubble moment, where you get to, similarly to the way it works when you're in a film set, to some degree, you're just in this like kind of temporary zone of creativity that you work up
Community.
to. Exactly, yeah, you create these communities. And I don't think they're temporary communities,
Some of them could be quite long.
Yeah.
I mean, look at, us here.
So that's the great thing about film festivals, and especially with work, like with Seaview, which is a documentary about asylum seekers, with The Red Tree, which was about oppression of gay people. You get to present this work in a way that's so different than somebody just watching it on their phone. You've got the magic of being in a room together watching the film and other people's films, especially.
And I guess people who are there are the same minds, so with like-minded people. So then after that, the conversation is just organic.
It's so engaged, exactly. Yeah, it's great, really great.
In what ways do you believe your background as a visual artist informs your filmmaking style and storytelling approach?
Yeah, that's really interesting, actually, because I got into this whole thing as a photographer. Right. And even a performer to some degree. I used to perform in nightclubs a lot with different drag personalities. And then as time went on, I got into making kind of video installations and video art. This was like late 90s, early mid 2000s. Seaview was the film where I wanted to try and take that aesthetic that I had worked on and map it into a documentary format. And so that I was interested in how the immersive aspects of a video installation could recreate for the audience the experience of being kept in this limbo world of asylum seeking, where you're stuck there for years, not knowing how long you're going to stay, and having this kind of sword of Damocles hanging over your head, never knowing at what point you're going to be chopped and sent back. So that early video installation work really fed into that film and has continued, and my experimental filmmaking background has continued to feed into the films. And even the film Never Stop the Action that we've just finished together when people see that, it's a film that has as its backbone two youngsters on their way home from a club that run into all these different characters, including your character, Deborah. But in between that, we have all these little vignettes because we jump out of the train as they start to tell their stories, right? And so I think a lot of that older style of mine, and a lot of that older style in terms of like the more experimental take and shooting on Super 8, and you know, that's still really in there as part of that aesthetic, you know. And in many ways, Never Stop the Action has become kind of a compilation film of lots of the different moments in my film history.
And as you say that, I'm going to go back in time again, because you talk about drag shows and things, because I had wonderful time with certain friends back in the day, you know, going to some of the best drag shows ever. I mean, best experiences ever, best talent, best visuals, you know, the get-up and the makeup, and the best community of love and care.
Yeah.
Because, you know, at that time, with all crazy things happening, you know, that community taught me what to look out for, how to take care of myself at that point as well.
Yeah.
You know, and then we talk about clubs, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, my thing was outside of Studio 54 and those places was Paradise Garage.
Yes.
Were you ever there?
No.
Oh, you missed it.
Oh, I missed it, yeah. I didn't come to the States till the 90s. So I missed it.
I should miss seeing Sylvester. And,
I never saw Sylvester. Sylvester was long gone, but you know, I was born in the 70s, so Sylvester we sadly lost before I ever got to see Sylvester.
Oh my God.
But you know that
Yes.
that whole history is the foundation of our friendship and our collaborative process, because the first day we met, we were filming Jean Graham's film Jack on the Come Up.
Yes.
And we had sat down in Central Park for a not very appetizing sandwich.
Right.
And you started telling me, I asked you how you'd ended up in New York, and you started telling me all about coming up here and dancing and going to Paradise Garage and all of that. And I was, of course, totally just carried away with all these memories, because your face just lit up talking about it. And that's where this character that I then wrote for Never Stop the Action, for Debs, was all you. All you.
That whole thing, even coming on the train, and you know, that whole thing, I can't wait to see it. And, and again, it brought back that whole time in my life. It was just such a wonderful time in my life.
Yeah.
You know, where you mix your ordinary life with that of celebrity, and in a space where everybody is one.
Yeah.
Everybody is one. Didn't matter white, black, gay, straight. You were there to have fun, enjoy, and be together. Be together.
Yeah. I mean, my version of that would have been a bit later. It would have been more like the late 80s and the early 90s with like the house music culture.
Right.
But again, it's the dance floor, it's the music, it's the spirit of community, you know. But I loved that in the film, that when I was writing the script, thinking about these two youngsters coming home from one dance floor and meeting Debs, then your character, who's like, oh, well, let me tell you.
You about yes. How do you find a balance between being a director, writer, editor, cinematographer, producer in your projects, and how does wearing multiple hats enhance your creative process?
Well, I think the thing about these days with the technology, and probably because of the era that I came up, is like it was kind of expected for us to know and do everything. I think it's really common these days for producers also to be editors, you know, for directors to be performers. You know, I think that for me as well, I think coming a bit from the art world and from the club world, there was always this kind of idea of like, do it anyway, we're all in this together. So it's always felt very natural for me to wear many hats, you know. As I get older and as the projects get bigger, I'm finding that I need to learn how to let some of that go, right? But I mean, isn't that part of the evolution and the wisdom that comes with age? You know, that you don't have to do everything, that there are lots of people around you that do fabulous things, and that when you all do fabulous things together, the whole picture is just
turns out to be wonderful. Yeah. What drives your collaboration with other filmmakers and artists, such as you work with Nikki Gogan in Build Something?
Well, I think what drives collaboration is that connect that you have with people. You know, when, like, as Nikki and I like to say, when the two P's connect. You know, when you're working with people and you start to finish each other's sentences, or contrarily, when you're saying one thing and so one of your collaborators says something that totally blows your mind, but it's still part of the same universe that you're trying to build, right? And I found that a lot with Jean as well, who's my partner in creativity and in life. You know, that there's just something extra special about it, you know.
How do you aim to amplify underrepresented voices through your storytelling, particularly in narratives like that of the Italian gay deportees, the Red Tree?
I think it's, for me, being able to be a filmmaker is a privilege, you know. It's something that not everybody can do, and it's something that I've spent a lot of time trying to make happen. And I think that for me personally, and I don't think everybody feels this way or should, but for me, I feel that having managed to secure access to the tools, I want to use them for good, you know? I think that there is such underrepresentation. Despite the fact that we all like to think that we've come so far, I think that is not the case. You know, I think that we've made advances, and I'm not trying to knock anybody, right, you know, but I think we still have so far to go, you know, and if anything, the way this country's been going the last few years just really underlines that, you know.
So you feel positive about the future?
I'm always so positive about the future. Oh my God. I mean, you have to be positive about the future, you know?
Yes.
I mean, those moments seep in where you doubt the whole thing, but you know, that's when I turn to community and to other people and just think about the strength that we all give each other, you know?
And maybe now there might be more speakeasies and whatnot.
Yeah, who knows?
As a member of the Brooklyn Filmmakers Collective, how has being part of a creative community influenced your projects and perspectives on filmmaking?
So yeah, Brooklyn Filmmakers Collective is, we meet weekly, and it's an ever-evolving group of filmmakers based in New York City, not just in Brooklyn. And it's just this wonderfully diverse group of smart people who are there to help each other get their projects made. And what we do a lot of is work in progress screenings. So we'll show, somebody will come in and say, I've got this 10 minutes of like raw footage that I think maybe there's something here. And people will just like discuss, oh, this, you need to read this book, or, you know, you need to meet this person, you know. So it's just this kind of bubbling pot of creativity and collaboration, you know. How it's influenced me personally is that I've shown works there when I'm struggling with the edit, and I've had just incredible feedback from people, you know.
What role do you believe film and visual arts play in advocating for social change and addressing pressing issues like the gun violence in your, you know,
yeah, I think
and LGBTQ rights?
Sure, yeah, I think that film has this incredible film. I'm using that term to mean like all kinds of moving image work, right? And I think that it has an incredible potential to change people's minds. I think it always has, you know, and to, as one of my friends in Ireland likes to say, to liberate some facts in their direction, you know. And I think that these days more and more so, because everybody basically has a walking cinema on in their hand,
right?
You know, you can watch anything you want at any moment,
right?
You know. So the potential of that is huge.
Can you walk us through your experience shooting and producing This One's for the Ladies at South by Southwest and receiving the special jury award?
So I got into working on This One's for the Ladies because Jean Graham, my partner, had come up with this idea for this film. And he started showing me some clips on YouTube of these dances, you know, exotic dance nights that women were organizing across the country for their girlfriends. And I was immediately captivated by the whole thing. I was like, well, this is fun. And so we started to travel over to Jersey, and it was literally just the two of us driving over, me with a small camera and Jean as director. And yeah, it was a lot of fun, you know. It was a lot of fun, and it was the community were so welcoming. And
you guys had great footage.
we were right there.
It was a lot of fun.
We were
and
right
it was
there.
a world I never knew existed.
Yeah. Well, I didn't really either. And I mean, I think it's, for me, the world was so rich, and it was so much about community, and it was just the total opposite of the stereotypical cliches you hear about people who are like sexy dancers. You know, it was about people dancing their way out of a bad situation into a better life. It was about people coming together every week to forget about the things going on for them that they had to think about all the rest of the week, you know. So yeah, it was so much about community.
How do you approach the documentation of real world movements like Gays Against Guns, and what impact do you hope these documentaries will have on audiences?
So the approach for me is always about how do we tell these stories authentically, and that means getting to be with the people who are actually creating the stories. You know, you want to be in there, in the trenches. With Gays Against Guns, I started making this film about basically the week of the Pulse nightclub shooting in 2016. That was the event that was the catalyst that formed this activist group, Gays Against Guns. And I didn't know anybody in the group, but I showed up at the New York City Pride March, which was 10 days after Pulse. And Gays Against Guns had organized to march in that. So I just showed up with my camera. And 8 years later, we now have a feature film, and that I've followed the group over that period of time. So I think with documentary, the approach is getting to know people, getting up close to them, and spending the time.
Looking ahead, what themes or stories are you eager to explore in your future projects, and how do you envision your evolving role as an artist and activist within the filmmaking landscape?
Well, right now I'm excited because I've actually just about finished 2 features. So I'm really, one is Never Stop the Action, and then the Gays Against Guns documentary is coming out 2025 as well. So it feels great to be finished with something. I mean, you know how long these things take. And in terms of moving forward, I've been writing a lot, actually. I started really writing a lot more during the pandemic. So I've written a pilot for a TV series, and I've got outlines for more feature films, more drama. So, but you never know. I mean, I think I'm excited about moving towards doing more drama. I really, really like directing drama and working with actors. I love that. So that's what's next.
Well, I'm going to say now you've heard the past, present, and future, folks. Paul, for this segment, thank you so much for hanging in here with us. Want to show, really, really wanted to show people who you are, what you do. And I know a lot of people in your world know who you are, but in my world, they don't know who you are. So yeah, there you know. Now you know. Anyway, thanks to Cheese, the OTC team. Audience, thank you for tuning in. Spending this time again. Like, follow, share, drop a comment. Check out the store. We've got a store with merch. Become a member. Because in becoming a member, you're going to be able to see the next episode or the next conversation with Mr. Rowley. It's a little more personal. So, exclusive for YouTube. But then as a member, you would be able to tune in or tap into 24 different conversations for the year. That is only found on our Inside the Call. So as I say, Inside the Call, I'll meet you there. Thank you very much, Paul, for this and for staying with us now.
Yes.
Yay! And when you're on the beat, stay on the sunny side of the street safely. Be health conscious, kind to one another. And don't forget to give thanks to the little, the little, the little and big gifts as we strive through and to this beautiful life. See you.